The other thing I wanted to talk today about are what we do. We're going to go back to the square roots of negative numbers. We're going to talk about another number here, square roots of negative numbers, negatives. Previously we said the square root of a negative, well, it's not a real number, right? We said the square root of negative 25, not a real number. And that's true. It's still not what we consider a real number. However, today we are going to actually get an answer on these by talking about another number called I. And by definition, I is set up to be the square root of negative 1. So what this gives us, it gives us a way of describing such numbers, and we'll do it more, finish it out in just a second. But by definition, we're just going to call I the square root of negative 1. Now, along with this, call it the definition here, there's also a second part, and that's what the square of I squared equals. And you can almost see it there. If I is the square root of negative 1, then to square it, you get just negative 1 without the square root. So I is the square root of negative 1, and then I squared is just negative. Those are definitions to remember. Okay, so back to square root of negative 25. Now, instead of saying this for our answer, here's what we're going to say. But think about kind of the splitting up there that we did earlier. Can I say negative 25, the square root of negative 25, think about that as negative 1 times 25. And why would I do that? Well, basically what I've got here is I've got the square root of negative 1, which is I, and the square root of 25, which is 5. So don't I have 5I there? Yeah. So we're going to answer the square roots of negatives this way, with the I. Square root of negative 25 is 5I. So what would the square root of negative 49 be? That'd be 7I, wouldn't it? Because you got the negative 1 and the 49. So you got the I, and square root of 49 is 7. Okay? Now if you had, say, what would I do? Should I do anything here? What about the square root of negative 6? Well, I could simplify that partly. Can I do anything with the 6? No. But I do have the square root of negative 1, don't I? So you either say I times the square root of 6, or vice versa. Square root of 6 times I. See what I'm saying? You can't really square root the 6 or simplify it. Now, if you get one, is that okay? I squared of 6. If you get one like the square root of negative 12, you know, there I can say negative 1 times 12, but what am I going to do with the 12? Well, wouldn't I split it up more to be 4 and 3 for 12? Well, let's do it this way. It's just like that when it's I times the square root of 12. But the square root of 12, unlike the 6, that can be split apart. 4 and 3 is 12, and then square root of 4 is 2, so I get 2I times the square root of 3. So it's the same as before. If you can simplify your square root, that's what they want you to do. Question or any concern on that? All right, now, just are these the same here? Same answer? Different answers, yeah. I times the, square root of negative 36, that's what? 6i, right? Because you got the square root of negative 1, square root of 36, so that's 6i. This one is, what's the answer there? The answer there is negative 6 because, yeah, the I comes when you have a negative inside. This one has a negative on the outside, so yeah, it's just the square root of 36, which is 6, with the minus. What is this one? just in case, but I don't think that one happened. Yeah, that was negative 6i, isn't it? Because I've got the negative, but then I've also got the negative on the inside. So I've got the square root of negative 1, so that's I. Square root of 36, that's 6. And then I've got this other negative. Yeah. So anyway, all three give you something slightly different there. Yeah, to get an I, it has to have a square root on the negative on the inside of your square root. Okay, well, what this also opens up is another set of numbers called the complex numbers. And the complex numbers have these I numbers involved. Here's what they look like. Complex numbers. These are going to be numbers, can be in the form A plus BI. Where A and B are just real numbers. A plus BI. So for example, A and B are just real numbers, so it's 3 plus 4i. That's called a complex number. It's a little bigger set than just your regular real numbers because I've got, now there's the I, this is already simplified, of course. That is a square root of a negative there involved because you got the I, right? But anyway, these numbers are called your complex numbers. Okay? Now what we're going to do with those is we're going to talk about adding them, subtracting them, multiplying them, sort of dividing them, like we've done before. We've done radicals and polynomials. So we're going to do adding and subtracting of these and all that good stuff with the complex numbers. Okay? There is good news, though. Adding them, adding complex numbers. So if I had two of those added together, 4 plus 7i plus 6 minus 10i, say. I'm just adding those two complex numbers, right? I've got this, that's a complex number, and that is also a complex number. What do you think I would do? Good news is this is really very similar to everything else we've talked about, because if I wanted to add those together, what do you think I would do? Add the like parts, yeah. Yeah, I'm going to add, I is really not a variable, but it's like one here. Yeah, so this doesn't have the I, that doesn't have the I, so I would add those. And then these two have an I, so I would combine those. 7 minus 10. This is 4 plus 6. And then 7 minus 10 would give me negative 3i. Yeah, you just add the like parts. The I parts, you add them together and add the non-I parts as well. Okay? Just like we've always done. All right, well, what about subtracting? Boom. Yes, question. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, right here. Yes, that that would probably be better written 10 minus 3i. Yes, thank you. Plus a negative is more easily written or more efficiently written, minus 3. Thank you. All right. Now, as for subtracting, what do we got to do there? What if I had 9 minus 13i minus a negative 6 plus 14i? 9 minus 13i minus negative 6 plus 14i. We're doing the same thing. Yes, and what does the minus here in front mean? It's got to be distributed, doesn't it? It's like distributing a minus 1. So I'm going to do the minus here and the minus here. So that would be 9. Nothing changes here up front, but that minus in front of that one changes those. Minus times a minus gives you a plus 6. And then a minus times a positive gives you a minus 14i. Yeah. So it's the same thing. You just got to distribute the negative, so to speak. So we have 9 plus 6, it's 15. And then minus 13i minus 14i, negative 27i. These two combine here, and then these two combine there. Is that okay?